Chief Doreen Davis. Ojima Kinuion Kwaraikwe is my Algonquin name. I was gifted that by my grandmother from Mattawa, and I've carried that name since about 2001. The smudging that we did here today is sage, so that the women and men can both smudge with it, whether the woman is on her moon time or not. So what we do is we smudge our brain, our head, we smudge our eyes, we smudge our ears, we smudge our mouth, and we smudge our heart. So that's what we can think clearly, see clearly, hear each other's voices clearly, and that when our heart is open and our heart is free. So that's what it is. And so Ron and I have smudged the flag, the plaque that I'm going to present the township today, and my assistant Connie will come around. She is my daughter also, and if anyone wants to smudge, she will assist you in smudging. So just feel free to put your hand up and she'll come. We're running out of sage, but we'll get as much done as we can. Miigwech.
Anyone wish?
Thank you, Chief.
Just keep your hands up. I'll come to you. Sure? Oh, sorry. Just wait for more. Okay, thank you. Okay. So all you have to do is gather it up.
It is such an honor to be here today and to be invited to see the announcement that came out to bring everybody here today. I mean, this is such an important part of our communities getting together and showing the support that we feel in our hearts for the Indigenous community. And Chief Davis, it is an honor to be here today. There are so many things we can be doing, and there's lots on social media that tell us the things to look at and to read, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee report, and just all the wonderful things in there that will help us move forward. But most of all is to listen. And I look forward, and I'm honored to have an opportunity in future to sit down and to listen. So thank you so much.
Today is a day of growth. It's very, very painful for a lot of people, but it is also very, very positive that there's a movement. In 2013, a lady by the name of Phyllis wore an orange t-shirt to her school that her mother gifted her, and they stripped her of that. And she speaks today very clearly about that pain and the loss of that orange shirt. And that started this movement in 2013. And we carry that on today. And it is important that we don't let this go. That 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we are still talking about the beginning of this day. And then we move forward. And my thoughts about today is a day of education. We cannot move forward without educating each other about each other, about who we are, who our ancestors were, and how we can come together to respect those ancestors, what journey they were on to get us, each one of us, to this point here today. So growing together and being together and educating each other about each other's journey is, to me, a very important thing. I was asked by many different groups to be in different places today, all the way from Ottawa to Kingston to Westport to Lanark to all over. But Ron reached out to me, and it was very important for me to have him talk to me, because Ron and I have been on a journey for a very long time. We've been working together to try to improve our relationship and the relationship of all the people around here, to grow in a good way and share our vision. And that's been really, really important to me. So I chose to be here today with Ron and you people in this township who has extended nothing but goodwill and welcome to me for many, many years. So that's why I stand here today with Ron. And he mentioned about raising the flag, and we'll do that today to have mass for those children and for the people from residential school who have survived But I also, he mentioned a plaque, and I didn't know in a couple of weeks if I could pull it off, but I was able to get Donna LaRocque and another gentleman to work with me, and I did get that plaque ready, and I'm here to present it to the township today. And it is another piece of the puzzle of reconciliation for this township, for the Frontenac, for my community, for all of the Algonquins of Ontario, which spread out through from North Bay, Mattawa, all the way to the city limit, all the way to other side of Ottawa, and so on this side of the Ottawa River. So those 10 communities of over 8,000 people are, out there today, educating and sharing their thoughts with others. And I'm here today on behalf of them and my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief George. So thank you very much, Chief, for the plaque. This was not discussed at council. It was something I thought about. There was many municipalities recognize the territory that they're on, and at our council meetings, we don't really do that, and forgive us for not doing that. But to try and address that, I asked Doreen, Doreen, can you make us a plaque that recognizes the territory of the Algonquin Nation? And this is what she produced. And this is ranges from the Ottawa River right up to Bank. Yeah. As you can see, it's quite an expansive territory. It also put on this plaque is all the different communities related to the Algonquin First Nation peoples. So thank you very much for this. We'll hang it with pride in our... Perfect. Thank you. So I asked Doreen if how long it would take for speeches, and she said, "Well, it'll be real quick. I'm quick-winded," and unfortunately, I'm not. So what I've done over the last couple of weeks is I've gone over Truth and Reconciliation reports from the commissions. It's hundreds of pages long. And I've got a few items on here. So when I put together what I wanted to talk about today, I put in my own personal views, the relationships that I've had with Chief Dwayne Davis over the years, and I've taken some text out of those commission reports just as an education for everybody that has come here today. So forgive me, I'm going to be reading from a piece of paper because I didn't want to miss out on anything. So I wanted to personally thank Chief Davis for attending today. As she mentioned, she had invites for that whole territory you see on the plaque being passed around. And she chose North Frontenac, and she said that's based on the relationships we are having. Since I became mayor 2 terms ago, one of my first missions was to meet Chief Davis and to start working with her nation and understand what it is that the community works with. And I'll talk a little bit about that more, but I just wanted to say I'm honored and privileged that you chose North Frontenac. I got goosebumps just from appreciating you attending our event today. So thank you very much, Miigwech. So what is Truth and Reconciliation? In one statement I got out of all this report, it's an ongoing process of establishing and maintaining respectful relationships, period. That's between First Nations, those in need, and colonial immigrants like ourselves. So critical part of this process involves repairing damaged trust by making apologies, providing individual and collective reparations, and following through with concrete actions that demonstrate real societal change. All Canadians must demonstrate the same level of courage and determination as we commit to an ongoing process of reconciliation by establishing a new and respectful relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians. So this is from a Canadian perspective. From a local township perspective, as Doreen just pointed out, her and I have been working on this for a number of years. Now about schools, we're hearing a lot about schools, residential schools. The schools were first set up as boarding schools and industrial schools put in place to assimilate First Nation people into the colonial ways of life and stripping the Aboriginal people of their ancestral history and cultures. Boarding schools were provided a limited education with a heavy emphasis on religious instruction. Industrial schools were intended to prepare First Nations people for integration into Canadian society by teaching them basic trades. By the 1920s, the federal government ceased to make any distinction between them, referring to simply as residential schools. Student education was further undermined by the amount of work the students had to do to support the schools and make them self-sustainable versus publicly funded. So these schools were set up by the federal government, run by the churches, but they had to maintain and sustain themselves. So this basically was child labor to sustain those schools. So they worked half a day. They got educated for half a day. The education was primarily just memory teaching, no on-hands education. And then they went out to the fields, the barns, the forest to cut wood, plant, harvest, things like that in order to survive. Even then, the food, there was shortages. It was basically tasteless soups that they were providing. No meat, no fish, no things like that. It got so bad that the children, some of them had to run away and they died of exposure. Some committed suicide. Some died through diseases, malnutrition, etc., etc. The time allocated for vocational training was actually spent in highly repetitive labor that provided little in the way of training. There were many accidents, deaths, including suicide, physical abuse with strap, yardsticks, slapping and punching, and sexual abuse. So that's a little bit about the schools. So when you hear about residential schools, I never realized the impact until I actually read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. I'm going to make that report available on the township website, and back and spend a day reading that report. It's very educational and really highlights what these children and the Aboriginal community as a whole had to go through during those trying times. So back in June 24th, 2020, as we just mentioned, Doreen and I have been working together. So in June 24th, 2020, Chief and I put out a public media release together. At that time, Chief Doreen Davis and myself set out a plan to work together to enhance relationships and community in general. Chief Doreen Davis stated that we have agreed to focus on communication, education, and economic development as our top priorities. In that statement, I said myself that going forward, we plan to provide this type of communication on a regular basis. We'll be putting together detailed plans for education on forestry, habitat, natural medicines, food, building shelters, and canoe making as some examples. Unfortunately, COVID-19 hit, as you know. This was June last year, and we never got together again due to the COVID. But that plan is the foundation for moving forward. Our strategic focus will be creating a self-sustaining community that benefits all who live in this great community. I've expressed my sorrow and offered apologies to Chief Doreen Davis several times over the years, and today I would like to make that apology a public apology to the Shabbat-Abajuan First Nations and all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples across Canada. We are sorry about the atrocities that took place by our ancestors, and as descendants will strive to take the next step in reconciliation. Reconciliation must support the Aboriginal peoples as they heal from their destructive legacy of colonization that have wreaked havoc in their lives. But it must do even more than that. Reconciliation must inspire Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples to transform Canadian society so that our children and our grandchildren can live together in dignity, in peace, prosperity on these lands that we all share. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, as the original people of this country and as the self-determining peoples, have a treaty, constitutional and human rights that must be recognized and must be respected. From the report, it says the hope of the First Nations is that one day we'll live together as a recognized nations within a country we can all be proud of. Whether one is First Nations, Inuit, Métis, a descendant of European settlers, a member of a minority group that suffered historical discrimination in Canada, or a new Canadian, we are all inherit both the benefits and obligations of Canada. We are all treaty people who share responsibility for taking action on reconciliation. Today, we recognize and acknowledge the truth and the commitment to the sincere path to reconciliation. Today, we replace our municipal flag. Every Child Matters flag will stay at half-mast until every child has been found and relocated to a peaceful resting place where they belong. So with that, I want to say thank you, Miigwech. It's an honor to be a partner with you on reconciliation. We have the base in place as we have worked on, and now we need to work on forward. So this just isn't a tick off the box thing that we want to do because the federal government said that we're going to have this stage reconciliation. We need to take action starting today, starting tomorrow. Today we're going to recognize and accept the truth of what had happened. Tomorrow we work on reconciliation. Thank you.